Welcome to the Flower Prophecies, a podcast exploring all things flower essences and remedies and flower therapy, and how this vibrational plant medicine has the potential to heal and shift our individual and collective health and consciousness. We'll be diving deep into the specifics of individual essences, nature's energetics, emotional healing and growth, as well as hearing client case studies, hosting special guests and professionals, and I'll be sharing my own personal explorations and philosophies channeled straight from the flowers. Through my own unearthing, I have discovered what I believe to be the most profound teaching of the flowers, and I now wish to share with you the practice of alchemizing fear into beauty. So, welcome back to the Flower Prophecies, everyone. Thank you all for joining in. Today, I am super excited to dive in with our first guest of this season. Samantha Boersma, I hope that's how you pronounce it, is a visionary, an intuitive, and a creatress, immersed in the world of flower essences and plant spirits. Her body of work, The Spiral Path, has a foundation rooted in the divine feminine teachings and incorporates principles of Ayurveda, yoga, and tantra. She acts as a bridge from spirit to the physical to remind you how connected, supported, and nourished you are. I absolutely adore Samantha's energy and how she shows up and shares her magic with the world and online, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today. So welcome, Samantha. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to nerd out about flowers with someone who can appreciate it just as much.
Right? It's like anytime I speak to someone that's like as into it as me, it just goes so many places. Doesn't
the
stop.
Best.
Amazing. So I haven't actually been following you online for very long, but that's where I found you. And when I did start following you, I watched one of your videos and I was just so drawn to your energy. You have like this playful and bright light about you. And I just love it so much. I think I would say I'm very similar in that sense. So probably why it resonates so much with me. And I've also heard you speak about the flowers and their medicine being this playful, childlike spirit as well. And I wanted to ask if you think there is any sort of correlations between being in this energy yourself and working with a medicine like this.
You know, I'm really interested to know if it's, chicken before the egg type of thing, like which one comes first, because I recently did a course called Fairy Circle where I went into fairy medicine, and I specifically pulled up some of the flowers that I work with that I really associate with fairies. And I noticed a lot of the flowers I work with are fairy medicine. And I think there's a really interesting dynamic there where fairy medicine asks us to kind of go into and release the things from our childhood wounding in order to step more into the fullness of our childhood wonder. It's almost like this reclamation journey that we go through, and we receive those gifts again that we had when we were little, that way of seeing the world, full of wonder and magic and possibility. And I think that might have something to do with this inquiry.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's so true. Like I think back to how I was as a child and, going adventuring into the bush and the forest and everything. I can feel that sense of wonder and awe within. And I feel like something like a spark of that carried through my life and through my personality, but definitely has, now that I'm working with the flowers, has sort of brought me back into like a fuller state of that.
Yeah, I feel like they bring that through strongly. And I'm kind of giggling to myself because I'm thinking about the way that I feel like both flower medicine and fairy medicine can have like this kind of like unrestrained communication where they just kind of like say it like it is, like a child.
Yeah.
They don't have that cultural conditioning. They're not holding back. And so sometimes like fairies or flowers can be a little bit like demanding. And I love that so much.
Yeah. I agree. It's actually funny because when I sort of communicate with flowers and plants, they do have like this personality of their own, and it's almost like each of them is like a different character, and it is just like there's nothing holding them back. They're just in their essence, like they are that particular sort of like archetype, and like it shows through in the way that they communicate.
Yeah, gosh, we're getting into it already, but they're such a good reminder of that. And I really like going back to your question. I really like think a lot about being a child and the way that, we just spoke our minds as children, and the way that children are typically so much closer to source or their own intuition or their intuitive gifts, because they don't have these layers blocking them from receiving that information. And they don't have the mindsets that information, like to doubt themselves, that information could be false.
Yes.
So it just makes so much sense to me that the flowers would bring us into that energy. And then I'm also still curious if it's like something that we hold first and it's why we're drawn to this medicine, or which way that happens. I don't know. Yeah.
So something so interesting to ponder. I feel like I'm going to be thinking about this like for a long time. Oh, I love it.
And I also wonder if us maybe approaching with that energy affects what we receive back, because I know there's a lot of people who work with, for example, like poisonous plant medicine, and maybe they don't approach it with that same type of energy, but maybe they're finding the plants that meet them where they're at. I don't know.
Yes. I actually think that you could be right with that, because even just with what I've seen of the work that you do and with what I've heard you speak about, I feel like the way that I work is a very similar essence to that. And there's a lot of messages that you speak of that I myself have also sort of received from the plants and the flowers. And so I think you might be right. It's almost like whatever essence you are that goes in with that determines sort of what is resonating with you, for sure. And that's all it's about, isn't it? Is the resonance.
Totally. And I mean, I think about the way that plants show up differently for different people. And even, me talking to chicory versus someone who has a very different perspective on life talking to chicory, we might receive very different responses. And that's so cool. I love that so much. It reminds me all the time of how multidimensional the flowers really are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I shared like a little snippet last week, I think it was, of a marigold flower that I was making an essence of. And I asked people to share their interpretations of what the flower, what its properties and what it was there to help with. And the vast like difference in the responses and what it brought through for them was so beautiful. Like they were all so different, but so beautiful. And they all then but they all sort of drip back into the same elements. And I love that.
I do too. And it reminds me too about how you messaged about the message I received from Bloodroot.
Yes.
And you received a very similar message from Marigold. And that's something I've really been sitting with a lot lately as well, is like, we can get the plant information we need from the plants around us in our local environments, because plants have such a wide range of things they can help us with. Like there's a plant where you live that can help with the things as a plant where I live. And that is so amazing.
I was literally just thinking about this morning as well. I was thinking about how like a lot of like, because there's like your typical sort of bark range of essences that is more used where you are as well. And then there is like, I use the Australian bushfire essences a lot. And I was thinking how like specific flowers have the very, very same properties as other flowers in the range over there. So it's like you're saying, it's like, it's just what's in your environment. They all provide us the same medicine and what we need, but it's what's in your environment that can gift it to us. Because ultimately, the flowers and plants themselves have so much more intelligence than us. They know exactly what we need.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. This is one of the many like very defiant principles of flower essences, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it goes against the way that we live in the world currently and helps us change our orientation to the world. And how cool is,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I also think that the way that flower essences are so subtle and we can really open ourselves up to speaking to them helps us with that fact that, or helps us, I guess, know what to use for them to go where we need them, if that makes sense. Like for me in my work, I receive them psychically.
Yeah.
For example, if I was looking into your energy at what flowers could help with whatever you're going through right now, logically, I might come up with like a certain blend. But if I look in psychically, I might come up with something very different because I'm just letting them tell me. Yeah. And I feel like that points to exactly what you're saying, is they're just like, they're so much wiser than us. And so.
Yeah. And it's like look, I don't know how they do it. I guess it's magic, but they're almost like planting the little weavings that we need to stumble across to be led in the direction of the right flower. So like for instance, I know you speak of that you see them psychically, and I don't all the time have that experience, but it's more when I'm speaking to a client, I hear specific words that jump out to me, and then it then brings about that knowing of like that word relates in my sort of experience relates to a specific flower. And so it's like might not be the properties that you would like technically use for whatever this person's going through, but the words just jumping out point me in that direction. And it's like, it is magic how they can do that.
It's so magic. It sounds to me like you're almost matching the vibration of the word or what the person is saying to the vibration of the flower.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is. That's cool. What it feels like. It's like the frequency, like I can correlate the frequency with the flower for sure.
I love how they speak to us in whatever way we best receive,
Yes. Absolutely. But it's so interesting because I don't usually, unless I'm like intentionally working with someone, I don't usually like see images or anything like yourself of specific flowers. But it happened to me for the first time the other day. And I was like, oh, so that was cool.
What flower was it?
It's so interesting because it's like classified as like an invasive weed over here, but it's called Singapore daisy. I don't know the Latin name for it, but it's funny because it's for my husband. I know that he needs it. So it's like we've had like this invasion of it all over our property for the last like 4 years, and he's spent countless hours trying to like remove it. And then he was like going through something the other day, and I was lying there and I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, how have I not thought of this before? You need it as an essence.
The fact that it's been coming to him anyways is like, I love it so much. Yeah. I'm at the point where I'm like not even shocked by it anymore, but it's just as amazing every single time. Right?
I know. And I was like, how did I not see this? Like it's constantly like asking you to pay attention to it. It's amazing.
That is so cool.
And you're right. It's like, you're not shocked, but then you're also just like still so in awe of like how they work.
Yeah, it never loses its magic.
Never. I love that. I love it. It's so amazing. So I would love to, I guess, if you could share a little bit about your experience and how you sort of landed in the world of flowers and all that you do.
Yeah, it's been an interesting path, honestly. I love to say that my first name means listener and my last name means farmer. And so I feel like it was, I didn't have a choice. It was always within me.
Yes, I love that. I heard you say that on something and I was like, no way. And then I was like, my name's boring.
That was just a funny connection that I made. But I actually grew up in quite a strict religion, but it was always very intuitive, but kind of had fear of those intuitive gifts. And so I would shut them down a lot. And I was always really spiritual. I always really enjoyed that aspect. But the part that made me desire to break free from the dogma was taking an environmental science class, actually, and realizing the earth is really old. Why are these people telling me the earth is not really old? It just felt so deeply true.
Yes.
And it made me want to break free from the dogmas that I grew up in. But I was always really, really spiritually connected and really intuitive. And nature was always my inspiration. I actually studied fashion in school, and I was always inspired by the flowers or the organic shapes or organic textures and interior design. And I, once again, felt like fashion was too small and wanted to break free, needed more expansion in my life. And, I started down a healing path, and it led me to this world where there were so many options to explore, and plant communication and specifically flower essences really just pulled me, honestly. Like, it was just following the flow. And so realizing that the subtle realms were kind of where I had always been living my whole life, but kind of were a part of myself that I renounced. I welcomed myself back home, and the gifts came back online, and the practices deepened, and I just kind of followed the threads, and it led me here.
I love
it.
It's
been a long, winding journey, but things really opened up when I moved to this land that I live on now, which I call Fairy Mountain.
So beautiful. It's so interesting. I feel like we have so many similarities. I also studied and worked in fashion for like that was my first business, and I did it for 10 years. And
wow.
I too just knew there was like something more out there, and it's like something that really instilled that sense of creativity within me, but it obviously lacks that connection and purpose that sort of moving in a different direction holds. And then same thing as well. I was so called to like the earth and working with the earth and working with plants, but there was so much, like I didn't know which direction to go in. And when I realized that it was flower essences, that what I had been like, sort of what was waiting for me, like I sort of saw like so many correlations and so many clues, like in retrospect, of like that this was like the direction. So it's like so beautiful. I love that so much.
I feel like that's always how it goes when you're just kind of following where you're led. And then in retrospect, you're like, wow, this was there the whole time. That's so fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wonder if there's something about the fashion connection. I feel like fashion is so related to expression. And I feel like flowers are the most expressive, the most etheric part of the plant. And I wonder if there's something to that, or even the use of color in fashion and how healing the colors of the flowers can be.
Yes, it's so funny you say that because I run a like a monthly flower program, and one of the girls in there is also studying fashion, and she is just so enamored by the flowers. Like she is just like in love with them, and she's like playing with like, you know, different ways she can incorporate this work with fashion. And so it's so interesting. I think you might be right as well, because I see like a huge part of the work with flower essences is sort of drawing us back to the notion of creative expression. And like a lot of the messages that I've received from the flowers are about the foundation of creative expression as our way of life. And like that this is like, we are the creators, right? So creative expression is like the foundation for us. And so when we can be brought back into what that truly means, you know, that gives us everything that we need, right? So, yeah, it's so interesting to ponder.
It really is. I'm like geeking out right now.
We'll have to have some more conversations and go deeper into this stuff. So a lot of the work you do is in the divine feminine sort of realm, and the receptivity and, you know, the intuition, which is kind of what the flowers deliver us back to, right? And they innately instill these qualities within us, whether we, you know, practice them before using them, or whether we you know, just remember and return to them when we begin working with the flowers. But I would just love if you could talk a little bit more about what these elements mean to you personally and how you have woven them into your work.
Yeah, I will. So something that I received a while ago that I've just kind of been sitting on was this idea of feminine form herbalism. And I'm assuming I received this information from the flowers.
Yeah. Oh, I do that with a lot of stuff.
But it's this idea that our grandmothers and our grandmothers' grandmothers carried this information in their blood and bones for generations. And while it's beautiful that we have so much science and we dissect plants and we write down the ways that they can work in our bodies, I think that's like such a, you know, small part of actually learning from them. And it's really, it can be really limiting. I think this relates to like larger, you know, societal ways of interacting in the world. Yeah, I think if we just oriented to plants using our listening ears or our cosmic ears, or, you know, we just sit with them in silence and stillness, there's so much more that we can learn from them. And it goes back to the fact that they are our oldest and wisest ancestors. They have been around for a lot longer than us. And I think there's like a really strong sense of humility required in our relationship with them. And I think there's also this really big piece of the divine feminine that invites us to be able to hold more nuance. And I think that is so required when we're engaging with flowers and plants in general, because oftentimes they can be seen as, you know, sweet, tender, pretty beings. And I feel like I've received that I need to say that they are so much more. They're so multidimensional. They're so expansive. They're so powerful and courageous and strong and transformative. And so, yeah, I think my work is really asking me to bring forward this new orientation to flowers and plants in general. And it all kind of ties together with the divine feminine.
Yes. Oh, I'm also just giggling here, like nerding out, because I feel like we're on the same wavelength. we are at the same vibration, that's for sure. Because the piece about our ancestors and that the wisdom is there, and we've been sort of limiting it. So it's like with what we know and what we have been told through science and communicating with plants through the scientific lens, it is so limiting. And it's like everything else. It's like we don't know what's possible for us if we stay within that realm of what we have known before. And speaking of like the messages that resonated before with the marigold, is like I received this same piece of information that all of this wisdom is held within our ancestors, but we have that within us. Like we can access that within us and through the flowers. So it's like we don't have to be we don't necessarily need to even be learning from outside sources, like whether that is through our, actual culture or science or whatever it may be. It's literally all within us, and we can learn those rituals, we can learn those practices, we can learn all of that information from within. And I've heard that so loud and clear as well. And that in itself kind of expands your mind. Like just that knowing expands that limited way of thinking. And then as well, I don't know if you've listened to my any of my podcasts before, but literally the last episode that I did is just like me rattling on about how we have limited the flower essences and their capabilities for so long. We speak of them, like you say, we speak of them being this beautiful, gentle medicine, but to me, they're so much more than that. They are so powerful, and they have so much potential that is untapped. We don't even know yet. Like it's I don't actually think that it has a limit to how transformative it can be. And we just really haven't given them that opportunity yet. And so it is about stopping viewing them in this way that all they are is this gentle additional support for us, when they can be like this foundational healing and like way of living. And I just feel like I know exactly what you're saying. Like I can feel it all. So deeply. So I just, it's amazing. I could go on for hours.
It's incredible. And I feel like that in itself speaks of the power of the flowers, because we are like as far as possible from each other across the world, know? Yeah. And we didn't even, neither of us have really explored each other's work too much. Like it's been a few weeks or so. Yeah. And how amazing is that? And as you're speaking, I'm seeing the fact that all of our ancestors eventually returned back to the earth. And, what is that saying? Energy can be created, but never destroyed, only transformed or something like that. Yes. Like, of course we have access to the wisdom. Of course it went back into the earth. Wow. Yeah. It makes so much sense. It literally was used to grow the flowers that are present right now.
Yeah. Like the flowers, like you say, are our ancestors. They are like, you can picture your ancestors like as humans standing as these flowers now. Like, I don't know, like I'm picturing it. I don't know if everyone listening will picture it.
Oh, I'm so revved up about this.
Oh my gosh.
I have to say, I do agree that I received that message not long ago as well, that there's kind of like, there's more opening up. Like, don't even stay within what you know or what you wrote down so far, that a certain flower can help you with, because it's evolving at such a rapid rate, just like we're evolving at such a rapid rate, you know? And that's why I think this approach is so important, because it's just meeting the plant every single day, wherever it's at. And it's not being too stuck in these definitions that we receive at one point or another, just like allowing it to flow. You know, I read people's essence descriptions of chicory online, and like something in me is like, no. And I don't want to invalidate their descriptions, but they just a little bit outdated. Like when I sit with chicory, I feel like it's like a little bit like, that's a little small for me.
Yeah. And it's funny that this happens, you know, because when we look at this realm of work with like flower essences, but also with energy, as in energy work, this to most would be an alternate sort of medicine, an alternate sort of work. And it's almost like we've started, like we've been speaking about, started putting those same scientific limits on what it is by just perceiving it in this one way and this one way only, because that's how it originally came through. But like you say, like if we're evolving, of course the flowers are evolving too, like everything's evolving. And if we picture it like our ancestors are constantly leaving this earth, that means new information, new wisdom, new knowledge is constantly being brought through the earth and expanding in itself as well, because that's what the earth does, right? So it's like they're going to be evolving too, like, and much more rapidly than us.
I even think about how like new generations of children like have really expansive mindsets. And they bring it to the older generations, and the older generations are like, I don't really get it. Like, what's going on? But like that fresh energy is just like, whoosh. But I think there's also something to like our ability to receive more from, like, I guess maybe hold more frequency. And so they can actually share more as well, because we are more capable of receiving.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I see that too. So it's like, I almost see it as like there was this generation of this work that was so needed in the way that it was being presented, because like you say, that's all that they could hold within. And the more that we, you know, I listened to something the other day that was speaking to how people like, generations that are coming onto the earth can just take on all of this information, and it really makes sense and really integrate with them in a much quicker pace. And so it's like we have that heightened ability to, like you say, hold more of that frequency, hold more of that information within us. So it's like now we've got more to do with it. And so I think, like I was saying, was before now, there's no disrespect at all. I just want to preface it with there's no disrespect to anyone that has worked with the flowers in certain ways up until now, and does still work with the flowers in certain ways. Like everyone's supposed to utilize them in the way that is for them. And so I hope, there's no offense taken to this, but I do see it as like there was a generation that needed that sort of slow, gentle medicine. And now I see moving forward, there's a new generation. And, you know, whether it's this new age, like the age of Aquarius, or whether it's something else, there's this new way of doing this work. There's this new way of utilizing the power of them and the potential of them as well.
I feel that very strongly. And I don't know if it's just my rebellious nature, but I even am like, you can't make a flower essence in the rain. Who says? Like, I see their vibration is still very strong. And I think the rain is a great part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a rebel too. I rebel. And it's funny because I've actually been this way my whole life, but it's almost like I now have like through the healing that I've taken from the essences, I now have the confidence to like stand in my rebellion and be like, no, like it doesn't have to be your way. Like, you know,
I've been this way my whole life too. I'm with you.
Oh, I love that. This is so just on another topic, because I just feel like we're vibing quite well. I'd love to know your astrology.
Yes. Well, I was literally thinking that before you asked, because I was going to say, I feel like it's my Sagittarius North node that I always want to break free of everything and just, you know.
I have Sagittarius moon.
Okay. I'm Cancer, Pisces, Cancer.
Okay. So wait, your Cancer sun and Cancer
rising.
Me too. Cancer sun and
really?
Cancer rising.
Amazing.
That's hilarious. So I'm Cancer sun, Cancer rising, and Sag moon.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Of course.
Of course.
Naturally.
Oh, that's so funny. And it's so interesting actually as well. I have seen your what have you called it? Your Stardust offering. And I love that so much because I actually last year created a similar offering to that I called Celestial Nectar. But it was about, because yours is based on each zodiac season, whereas mine was based on each lunar cycle, like the moon of that month, and so it's so wild.
It's amazing.
I love it so much because, and this is something I don't think I've spoken to on the podcast before, but is such a big part of my flower essence journey is the interactions with the astrological transits and with the cosmos. Like every flower essence I work with, every remedy I work with, every, month, the correlations between the moons and the cosmos and what I'm working on without any intention of doing so is just wild.
So many Cancer placements, of course.
Yes.
Naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love it so much. And just like, so within all of my offerings, I actually offer my clients and the people that I'm working with, like some astrological sort of reflections in conjunction with the essences, because I think it's just such a big part, because the essences are connected to the sky. They're connected to the cosmos, they're created through sunlight. So, of course they're going to have all of these ties and connections with it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the stars that you make the essence under, or the moon that you make the essence under, makes such a difference in how it interacts in your body. Yeah,
absolutely. And actually, that's something I would love to ask you is, do you intentionally use certain phases of the moon or the sun to create your essences ever?
I do. I don't always. Yeah. Sometimes I'll just feel intuitively guided. And then I always write the sun and the moon, what sign they're in, on my essence. And sometimes I'll just be intuitively guided and I'm like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then sometimes I'm very intentional about it. Like on a Jupiter, I think it was a Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Taurus, I made a strawberry blossom essence and I'm like, wow, superpower strawberry blossom. Like,
oh my gosh. I love that. That's beautiful. I've never actually intentionally done so. Like you say, like I definitely note down what's going on at that time, but I've never used it specifically, like created specifically to a transit. So now I'm like super excited to actually do that.
Yeah, I think there's a fun, like Uranus Jupiter conjunction coming up that might be, I don't know.
I was just reading about that too. And I was like, this is amazing. And I think it's like almost, I could be wrong here, because I'm really bad at actually reading the chart. But I think it's actually like, because it's like in Taurus as well. Is that what it is? I think it's almost,
I think so, yeah.
Moving through where I have my MC in Taurus, like close to 21 degrees or something like that.
Oh,
but
how cool.
So wrong. But
I mean, I have Taurus in the 11th house as a Cancer rising, so it makes sense that you could have it in the 10th house.
Yeah. I think it's like it is on the, between my 9th and 10th. Yeah. Yes. I love that so much. I could talk about it all day, but but for the sake of everyone listening, I'll move on. Okay, so you mentioned that you when you moved to the land that you're currently on, that your practice and relationships with the flowers and the plants specifically, communicating with them has deepened for you and really opened up to you. And I love exploring everyone's unique sort of language with the flowers. And we've spoken a little bit about it, but I'm curious if you could share more about how it is that the flowers do speak sort of to and through you. I know that you take a lot from the cosmos, and then, you have this, the psychic images that come up for you, but I'd love to get a little bit of insight into your process when you're sort of creating flower essences or just communing with the flowers around you.
Yeah, it's been a journey that has evolved, which it sounds like you can relate to since you just saw a flower recently.
Yeah.
I feel like as humans, our gifts might be opening up a little bit more lately too. Just a side note, but
yeah. Oh, totally.
So I've always had really strong claircognizance where I just knew things and I had no idea why, even as a kid in school. And sometimes it would be like answers to a test or something. Or a question that the teacher asked that I hadn't learned yet or something like that. And I always noticed that this seemed a little bit strange, but I was like, this probably happens to everyone, right? But so it really started with the claircognizance for me, especially moving onto this land. It opened up and got a lot louder. I would just look at certain plants and know what they were and what they could help with. And I didn't know why. I really didn't even have a huge library of plant knowledge of what plants were.
Yeah.
I grew it a little bit prior to moving here, but when I moved here, it like really opened up. It's really interesting. And that's kind of how I've always received my essence blends. It's like the less effort I put in, the easier it flows. And I just have to make sure to write it down when it comes through.
Yeah.
But like the blends, they're just like, this is what you do. This is the name, boom. Yeah. Or I see it. And then there's like this real sensation of harmony with them together. But I actually did study psychic plant communication. And that's where I opened up my clairvoyance, because that wasn't my like first clair that I normally utilized. And I realized through that process how much I normally utilize my clairsentience, which is like feeling it in my body, which is an interesting one to engage with, because I think it can be easily like, oh, that's just happening within me right now. Like that's just like a physical feeling that I'm feeling. But I would notice that when I would psychically communicate with plants, they would show me in my body what systems they could help with. So it's a little bit of it all. And I feel like lately, even the audience has opened up a little bit more. And it's just kind of like putting all of those intuitive language pieces together. Usually when I name the essence, I like receive a lot more information. I had an interesting experience the other day. I was doing an essence consultation and I was like, can I just look into your energy? And I received Trillium, Bloodroot, and Lady Slipper. And I was really shocked by that. And so I kind of gave what I thought was going on to the person in the moment. But then when I named the essence, it was like, whoosh, and all this information came through. And it was like, there were so many layers to how this blend was helping this person. And I was like, wow, this is so much bigger than I understood. And so it's either like when I'm writing the description or I receive the name, a lot more tends to come through.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And I think there's so much as well power in the name of not only remedies, but just naming anything. I personally find that I'll like receive a name of something before knowing even what it is, like months and months prior. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like cool. I wonder what that's going to be. And it could be like anything. Like it could be an offering. It could be like a course. It could be a remedy. Like it could be just like the name of how a remedy acts. Like, and it comes through in the name, and I just like write it down. And then it makes so much sense when I like finally stumble upon what it is that the name's meant for.
That is so fun.
Yeah. And then like naming remedies, I also feel like there's so much power in that, and it kind of all ties it together when the name drops in. Like it can feel like a little bit disjointed and like not flowing, and like you kind of question it a bit, but once the name drops in, you're like, oh yeah, like perfect.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, the dichotomy of like the power in words and then the way that words can be so insufficient, especially with things like trying to speak about a flower essence blend, because it's just like so beyond what we're capable of expressing verbally. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, yes. So true, because part of me wants to be like, there's no language for like, the flower essences have a language of their own that isn't words. Like it's, you know, whether it's feelings, whether it's vision, whether it's just knowing, like it speaks through us in its own language. So there's no words for it. But then it's like you say, there's so much power in wording. And I also love that part about this work is almost like the storytelling through the words, and how much you can sort of deliver others in like the specific words you use, how much you can deliver a meaning behind something to others, but then at the same time it's so limited. It is a dichotomy. It's interesting.
Like that's exactly what I mean when I call myself a bridge.
Yes.
The best word I got for it, but it's like trying to translate. It's basically being like a language translator, right?
Yeah.
Like trying to translate this world of sensation and feeling that I know so well to this world that requires me to present it in words so that people can understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. And I'm just wondering now, like how you were sort of offering before the reflection that I'm sort of picking up on the vibration through words, and through like words that stand out to me. Maybe it's that the words that I use in other ways wouldn't necessarily deliver that same message, but maybe it's that I'm like almost infusing the words with that vibration before delivering them to someone.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And also, I feel like it sounded to me like you're hearing other people see those words and then knowing, or say those words and then knowing the remedy too. So it's almost like you're reading it to the vibration that they're putting off when they're saying it, even though it might not be the same in another context either.
Yes, absolutely. And then it's like, like just reflecting and thinking how this all unfolds unconsciously. It's just wild.
I know. And I feel like I'm sure it feels so effortless for you. Like you don't even necessarily realize what you're doing, but
no, but like it's also been something that I've had to learn to trust, and that's my way to go about it. Whereas before, like I wouldn't necessarily like pick up on it. It's just after, doing it so many times, I'm like, okay, now I can see what's happening, and I can like intentionally use it to my ability, but it is effortless still, because it still just happens.
Yeah, I feel like the trust is such a key part.
Such a key part. And that's actually something that I speak of a lot with my clients as well. And I did like a free masterclass the other day on like how to deepen your flower essence practice. And I didn't even sort of have it down to share, but it was like at the end of the class, it was like, how did I forget to add this to it? It's almost like the biggest key factor in like deepening your flower essence is building the trust in the essences themselves and allowing them to do the work that they're going to do on you without stopping them from doing it, without getting in the way of the essence by resisting it, right? So the deepest, like the biggest part to deepening your flower essence is trusting that they've got you and they're carrying you through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that surrender. And I'm even thinking about that when you're talking about, your way of receiving intuitive information. And I'm saying it's effortless, but like effortlessness in itself almost takes some effort to achieve.
Yes.
Because you have to get out of your own way.
Yes, absolutely. And then it's like, it comes back around to like what I don't know if I'm just going in circles here, but it comes back around to like what we're speaking of when we were first jumping on about like what came first. And it's like, I am like, well, I think the flowers have gifted me that effortlessness. But then it's like, or did that come first? Like, that sense of surrender and being able to do that. But then it's like, or is that like innately in me? And then now that I'm saying that, it's like, it's so obvious that we start off as this like essence with all of these traits and all of these beautiful properties ourselves. And one of them being like this, innate ability to surrender and trust the process. And it's what we're doing is like using the essences to move everything out of the way so that we can come back to that.
Like that's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking. I'm like, they're helping us release what's getting in the way of that.
Yeah.
But that's our true nature.
Yeah.
And it's almost like our true nature is likely the same as their true nature at its very core, but we just have the human aspect where we have this mind. And so they don't have a problem with forgetting their true nature.
Yes. Yes. Oh. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. How many times could I say it in a conversation how much I love this?
It's so good to geek out about flowers.
So good. So I guess, which is what you sort of were just touching on. And also you kind of covered a little bit with your upbringing and your religious upbringing, but I've listened to you speak about like the boxes and the norms that our schooling and our systems and society place us in, and not just, but especially as women, and how you've had this sort of realization through meeting the flowers in all the ways that you've been contained and all of the structures and limitations that have been placed on you and your authenticity and the way that you show up in the world. And I can resonate with this on some levels as well. I didn't have that upbringing, but in all of the ways the systems and the schooling does that to you. And I think the most challenging thing as rebellious little souls, is knowing that deeper within you, you have something there that is being stifled, and not knowing how to get that out, and not knowing how to express that, right? And I feel like the flowers really liberate us from this feeling. And for me, they've been like the enabler to acknowledge that I have been stifled and I have, been put in this box as well. So I'd love to hear from you if you're open to sharing a particular experience that has really been emphasized to you through the flowers, if there's one that you can sort of pick off the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways, and I think the why behind all of my work is liberation for this reason. And so I love that you use that word specifically. And I guess one thing that comes to mind, because this is a flower I've been working with a lot recently, on some new work that I've been doing, this kind of whole idea that we're talking about is really the current focus of my work and what I want to be offering in terms of courses and stuff like that. And so I'm offering this journey called Untamed, which was my word of 2024. I think last year it was something relatively similar. I'm not remembering in the moment, but there's been this continuous desire to remove all of the things that are keeping me in the boxes, because I think it's such a place where all of our core wounds kind of stem from. Mm-hmm. And so the flower that I've been working with a lot lately that came to me and that I'll be working with in this journey is wild iris. And I think wild iris can really help us when we try and contain and control our own creative energy. Yes. And this was just something that popped in for me at one point, but it was, I wonder if the ways in which we feel held back are actually just us trying to contain, or that part of us that tries to contain our creative energy. Because I noticed when I would do like fluid painting or something that couldn't have a specific or controlled outcome, then I kind of felt more in flow with the rhythms of life, and then, ease with existing. And so, that's kind of a little microcosm that I experienced that in. And then it's led me to exploring this a lot deeper, and using archetypes and myths and really looking into the ways in which this is kind of something that connects us all. We forget our wildness, or we cast it into the shadows, or I kind of see it as we forget that it's so important to go underground, and go into the roots. And we just want to live in this upper world. We want to just be the flower. We don't want to be the roots. But then when we remember and we go back home down to the root system and receive all of that nourishment, we can come into more wholeness, and we can integrate that wild part of ourselves. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And do you see, I guess, coming back into these roots and the underground as like the deeper work, or can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, I think it kind of connects a lot of the things we've been talking about. And on a larger scale, it's related to our fear of the feminine, and why I feel like the divine feminine work brings so much balance right now, because our world has been so masculine oriented, which is related to creating those strong boxes and controlling things and keeping things neat and tidy, right? Yeah. And so when we're moving with the cycles and we're going deep underground into the depths of ourselves and allowing ourselves to be, not so perfect, maybe a little bit chaotic, maybe a little bit untamed, then we can come back up and integrate that in with that other part of ourselves and not let it rule our lives so much anymore. Because I feel like this is something that I'm really exploring right now, is the ways that we keep ourselves in those cages that we are placed in by that way of thinking and those ways in society. And then that feeling like you need to break free, but not exactly knowing what to do. And I think the flowers carry so much of that wisdom, because they are effortlessly always underground, and above ground, and then arising, abiding, fading away, moving with the cycles, you know?
Yeah, I feel that really deeply, because it's almost like that, those boxes, we don't even realize how much they infiltrate every moment of our lives. And you can feel like, just me personally, even like in my days currently, I can, like when I reflect on it now, I can see how deeply those boxes and those norms have like impacted me, and how they still continue to do so, you know, just within having certain structures to your day, or you know, certain, I guess, accepted within the mind, accepted practices that should be like included in your day or not included in your day, or what is like okay in taking for yourself, like whether it be time or whether it be like exploring something new for the day, or does that fit into like what you should be doing with your day? You like, just in little ways, like how much this really plays into our every move. So I really love that, because it's like, I also, within those moments, the rebellion in me has this like frustration, because I know that I'm being contained, and I know that like I'm not allowing myself to be truly free and truly express within whatever activity, whatever practice, whatever, you know, like experience I'm in or wanting to be in. There's so many limitations placed throughout my days for me personally, but I can see how deeply bored in that is to everyone, you know, and because I guess I would say I'm a pretty tapped in person to, you know, to my own spirit, to what I personally want to do. And I've always been this sort of person that doesn't really follow, but it's still having an effect on me. So I can just see how large that piece is in the collective as well. So I love that you're offering that untamed, and that's come through for you.
Yeah, I feel like it's like, even in, like you're saying, even in the most micro ways, like for example, you decide on, let's say, a social media plan that you're going to stick to, or something like that. And so you stick to it. And, you know, I'm not saying that structure isn't extremely helpful, but there's ways in which we like imprison ourselves to that. And then we don't allow the intuitive hit to move in, because it's going to mess up the whole plan. And, you know, that's something that I would notice in myself. And it's like one of those times where you can be like, is this really me? And it's where the flowers are so helpful, because they're constantly helping us release what isn't ours to carry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also kind of like that reminder again of, like structure is so key. And like, even for myself, that's a big, I guess, piece that I feel like I need more structure in my life for it to flow. But it's like, reflecting on it now, it's like, well, actually, is that something as well that we've been limiting? Maybe there's a different way to structure. Maybe there's a different way of doing structure, in air quotes for everyone listening, that we haven't actually even become aware of yet. You know, like maybe there's something more here that we're missing, and maybe it is about allowing the flow in to create structure more. Like, we're so limited by our own perceptions. And I think that flower essences are a medicine for perception. Like, I think that is a big part of what they act on, is our perceptions, because perception is everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even the ways we judge ourselves based on the structure we lack because of our perception of other people on the internet, or someone who taught us that this was the way we had to do it, or whatever it is, that really strong, like internal critic that's always judging the way that you're doing things in the world.
Yeah.
That's at the core of it for me, of like what I think needs more balance. Yeah. And I think when we come in right relationship, like you're saying, basically with, those two parts, the flow and the structure, we can live a more peaceful life that's not so infiltrated by, constructs that weren't ours to begin with.
Yes. Yes. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here. So I might not include it. I don't know. But, it's interesting, this focus on the divine feminine that the flowers have brought you. And I actually have had like them come through to me and delivering me this message of the balance between the masculine and the feminine, but in a different way than what we've perceived it to be. So like not purely just the sort of structured, sort of rigid and like authoritarian masculine, and like then the flowy and intuitive feminine, but more to do with their underlying fears and what has limited them and the relationship between them. And this thing that keeps coming up for me is how misunderstood the masculine has been, and how I love sort of this focus of really embracing this divine feminine qualities. And in the same sense, I see like, well, maybe is another way forward as well as embracing that, realizing that we've also had this skew perception of the masculine, and the masculine has too, and that's why they've gone so astray, right? But so like this perception that we've held of the masculine, and it's just so misunderstood. It's like, I think we need to repair that connection within all of us as well, because we hold this view, this perception of the masculine as it is, and the way that it has kind of taken us in this different direction. But I think within us all there is this misunderstood sort of element and polarity to us that we need to sort of pay attention to. And so I'm trying to like look at me trying to limit myself. I'm trying to like kind of make this into like a brief context without rambling on for too long, so it might not make that much sense. But this is just something that the flowers has sort of delivered me, I guess, have sort of shown me, is this misunderstanding of the masculine.
I think that's so important, and I hope you do keep it in, because I think when we talk about and we feel into the effects of the patriarchal systems that have had impacts on all of us, it can be so easy to associate that with the masculine within us and or men in general. And, it makes sense with the harm that women have been caused. Really? And also these ways of constricting us really actually come from systems that are based in, a lot of times greed. And it really isn't actually about men or the masculine within us. And that feels really controversial to say, but I mean that in the way of, we've all been affected by the systems, and all of our water bodies have been polluted by the systems that we've been brought up in. And flower essences can help us clear them and reattune them and, shift the waters of our bodies so that we can come into a more healthy relationship with, I think, our world in general, and change these systems, and it starts within us.
It does. It definitely does. It starts within us on like a water level, but also in that polarity, in that relationship that resides within us. And then that's how we relate to the outside world as well, you know? So it's like when we can balance all of that, our perception changes, which allows the potential for our experience to change. And that's for the collective experience as well, right? So it's like when we can shift our perception on what it is that's going on. And again, I'm not saying that to take away from anyone's experience or anything like that. But when we can shift our perception so that we can move forward, and see that there's more potential there to experience. Because I feel like, again, this same theme that we've been talking about of limiting perception, plays into where we're going as a collective as well. Because, yes, we hold all of these, I guess, thoughts, and we hold all of these experiences that has led us to this point. But unless we allow our perception of the future to open up to endless opportunity, we're just keeping ourselves here within this reality, right?
Absolutely. And that is like, that reminds me of something that I feel like led me here throughout my life, which was being called an idealist and feeling looked down upon for that. And I came to the place where I'm like, you know what? It is amazing to be an idealist. If nobody's an idealist, then, the realist is here, the pessimist is here. If we don't have the idealist driving us towards something,
you're going nowhere.
Exactly. And it's like, shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars type of thing. Like, we might not get to the idealist's world, but we need someone to stretch us a little bit, like that's very important.
The visionary.
And I think the flowers help so much with that.
And I so agree. Like, I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but like, I have already done so many different sort of avenues with my life, like within my career and within my work. Yeah, the amount of times that I bump into someone and they ask me, "Oh, you're still doing this?" And I'll say, "No, I'm doing this now." And they're like constantly like astounded by like, the amount of times I hear, "Oh, I love how you just go for whatever new you're doing. Like, you just go for it and just do it, And I'm like, well, yeah, because like what if I've got this beautiful image of something that I can create, why wouldn't I? If something excites me and I can see this vision for it, why wouldn't I embrace it? Why would I just stay doing what I'm doing?
Yeah. And that is so needed.
Yeah.
And it's a very revolutionary way to be in the world, actually, because that's not the way most people operate. And I think flower essences are such revolutionary medicine in that they challenge a lot of our ways of operating in the world. I know earlier we mentioned, I think, the finding our plants locally, but I feel like another thing really challenged is you can make a no-pick essence. It's a sustainable method for engaging with the earth. It only requires, you only really have to have one bloom.
Yeah.
You don't have to have, 20 blooms in your essence if the plant can't give that up. And all it requires is a little bit of spring water and, something to preserve it in. It's just like, wow, this is such radical medicine. There's so many ways which it can expand our perception, even in just the ways we relate to making it and it in general, that not even going into like the power the flowers hold themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think I love that too. And that's one of the things I think is so, like you say, revolutionary. Like, it is the medicine for the future because like it is even such a sustainable medicine. Like, we don't need to, and as much as like using herbs and, using plants in a more medicinal way, like as in with the actual plant material, is so beautiful. I think there's still a limit to that, to what we can do with that moving forward in the future, because it does take plant material and it does take, effects on the earth to create that medicine. And flower essences, we need nothing from them. We need nothing from them, like you say. We don't even need to pick one bloom. They offer everything to us without us having to take, and I think that's something that we're not used to. And so it's like it couldn't possibly be something that worked, like in the eyes of the collective, because if it's not offering us, like if we don't need any of it, if we don't need to take, then it can't have anything to offer us. But it's like, well, actually it's got more to offer us,
Yeah. This is like something I really try to remember to remind people is that even with the dosing of the essence, like less is more.
Yes.
It's so ingrained in us to want to go hard and fast and take the whole entire bottle and think that we'll see, more effects. We want the transformation now.
Yes.
And even with the dosing of it, it's so important that we're gentle and we go slow, and just speaks so much to the fact that the subtle is so incredibly powerful beyond what people give it credit for.
Yes. Exactly. And it's like, I guess we've been doing ourselves a disservice because we've had that perception that you have to take more to receive more, when it's like you say, actually dilute it, take less, be more gentle, and it's more powerful.
And so I personally, I'm like really conservative with my dosing recommendations, and even the amount of flowers that I put in a blend.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I agree. And that's something else that, different practitioners have different ways of doing that. Because there's a lot of people as well that will be like, take flower essences throughout your day, like any one that you need at any time. And personally, I feel like that really dilutes the effects of them, because you're not focusing in on one area that you're working on. And so it's such a funny, I guess, way of seeing it as well, because I guess that's almost, again, can be perceived as like take. It's like you need something from them at every moment, so you're just going to take it, like, where it's like, well, actually, whatever you're moving through, you could be addressing that with just like the one remedy, because that's what's happening in your experience, and that's what the flowers do for you. It's like they bring everything back to like what you're experiencing here and now, and they sort of like intertwine and interconnect all of the different things that are happening for you. And if you just let it play out without trying to interfere, without trying to take more, if you just let it play out, then you're going to get the most benefit from it.
Yeah, I think just taking one at a time feels like it's more of developing a relationship with the plants, which is what I really seek to do and what really feels just true to me. Yeah. And what I really encourage for my clients as well, when I do a reading with them and we receive certain flowers, I'm like, sit with this flower, like get to know this flower, because the longer you spend time with them, the more they'll have to offer you. And it's also not just about what they have to give to you either, right? Like, develop a relationship with them. Yeah. Become a friend. It's a cool process.
It is. It's amazing. And it's actually so true in that I feel like, because I do that with a lot of most of my clients as well. And the people that I work with is sort of offer them, I inform them of the flowers that they're working with, so that they can create that relationship and begin to understand how it is that the flower is working for them personally. But I also think there's this element of like, once you have that relationship with the flower, you can actually ask it for what you're needing. Like this comes back to like the evolvement and expansive of the actions of the flowers, and not limiting them to this one description that we've always known, is like you can actually ask any flower for anything that you need, any guidance, any support that you need, and it's going to offer that to you.
Flowers are so magical.
Seriously, so magical. It's so funny as well. Going back to the whole the naming thing. When I first named my business, I had no idea where the practice of flower essences was going to take me, or like the involvement personally with them that I would have, the relationship with them that I would have. And the name of my business, I couldn't even tell you why I named it what I did, which is Heka Healing. Like I just stumbled across this name and I was like, yeah, like that seems right. I'm going to name it that. And then now going back to it, like Heka is like the Egyptian, the god of magic. Like it's the personification of magic. And the amount that I moved through this practice exclaiming the magic of essences, I'm like, of course I named it that.
Of course. I mean, they absolutely connect you to magic. I feel like that's one of the just most true properties. And I don't know if that's the fairies or what, but
no, but it's so true. And the thing is, so in Egypt, healing with magic meant healing with the properties of nature. So like basically what we speak of when we're speaking of magic is just the earth's actions. It's just nature's actions. And it's just that because our minds are limited, we can't kind of understand all of, and we don't need to, but we can't understand all of these divine workings that are happening through the earth. And so it's like the limited language that we have for them is magic, you know?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it.
Mm. Oh, this has been so beautiful. I would love to let me see if there's anything else I definitely want to touch on before we jump off. Well, I guess we've already touched on it, but I'll ask you again, is where do you see the future of flower essences going? And maybe that's a controversial question after our conversation, because if we see it going somewhere, we're putting a limit on it. But I'm going to throw it out there anyways.
Good point. I feel like what I'm going to say is I see the future of flower essences going to a place where people don't even need the essence to communicate with flowers, I hope.
Yeah.
Where people can be, I mean, I think it will take flower essences growing in popularity for this to happen. And this is maybe an idealistic dream, but I think it would be amazing if people remembered the fact that they have access to any flower's wisdom anywhere in the world at any time if they just tune into it.
I love that. And I think that is already happening, you know. I think that like I feel that happen for myself. Like I can definitely utilize the medicine in that way. And so I know that in the future, the collective is going to utilize it in that way for sure.
I think so too. I think we're remembering.
I think so. It's beautiful. And that's something actually that the flowers all deliver us to, is like that remembrance of our divine connection with everything. And that's something else that never ceases to amaze me, is that everyone that works with the flowers in this way always ends up in this same state of knowing and connection with the earth and with the universe and just this remembrance of who we are and our potential and, you know, everything that we're connected to. So I just love them.
You're making me so like excited for the future.
Yes.
And the now too.
Yeah.
The now is good too. And we're moving there.
Absolutely. I mean, we're already in the future. We're already there. Yeah. Oh, is there anything else that you would like to share while we're on today?
Do you mind if I share about my course, Untamed?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask that next. Would you like to tell us your offerings and how everyone can find you?
So I have this 3-day course, A Journey Home to Your Wildish Self, occurring on May 22nd through the 24th. And we're going to go through the myth of the Swan Maiden, which is something that is present in many cultures all over the world and something that connects us, a folk story that connects us. And it helps us take a look at what can happen when we abandon our wildish self. And then on the next day, we'll look at the ways that purity culture has shifted the word pure and think about what it truly means to be pure. And then we'll finish it with a journey with Wild Iris to tap into our boundlessness and our boundless creativity. And so I'm really excited for this offering and to introduce Wild Iris to anyone who hasn't worked with her before, because she is absolutely incredible.
So beautiful.
And yes, I am so excited. Thank you for letting me share. And the rest of my work is on thespiralpath.love.
Amazing.
And that's my Instagram handle as well, thespiralpath.love. So you can check out my essence blends and the one-on-one work that I do there.
Amazing. And I'll tag them below for anyone listening or watching in. Oh, Samantha, actually, do you prefer being called Sam?
I prefer Samantha.
Okay, good. Perfect. Samantha, thank you so much for being here today. It has been so beautiful, and I'm sure we will be connecting. I'm sure I'll have you back on because obviously we have a lot to talk about and to continue talking about. So much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I would love that.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that you loved the chat today. I'm sure you did. And if you did, can you please rate or subscribe to the channel that you are listening on? And if you would like to share anything from today's episode or about the show, you can tag the Flower Prophecies and or Heka Healing Flower Therapy. And yeah, I hope you all just loved it, and I will see everyone next week.